Design it yourself. Beginner's guide to designing a reef tank with filtration and flow being the focus. What we're looking at here is my latest build, and I figured to get back to basics and do an introduction on what should you think about from my experience and my pitch, and how do you get started with designing your own reef tank. This tank you're looking at, that is my 15th build, and I learned a lot in the 14 predecessors, and I also learned a lot in this build, and I think that is part of the journey, the learning journey. What do I mean by basic? Yeah, let's start at the drawing board. First thing to think about is you need a glass box to contain the water, and an aquarium. Typically, most experienced reefers, they end up with the basic rectangular shape of the glass box, or possibly a cube. It's not so common in the long run to stick to a bow front or a triangle. If this is your first time building a reef tank, I would recommend to start from a pre-glued glass tank or pre-made aquarium with a stand. But let's get back to the stand. Building the stand from scratch, you typically start with making a frame supporting the tank by carpentry grade 2x4s, or that is 45 by 95s in European standard. And then we add the legs. And here when you look at adding the legs and this section is actually kind of one of the weak spots. You want to avoid the tank from folding forward or backwards. So actually supporting the side leg structure of this design diagonally is very important. And the way I did it was to use the cover board, which we'll see later. But something to think about. Avoid the diagonal shift. Now also, if it's a heavy tank like a 100 gallon or a 300 liter tank or more, typically it would make sense to support the weight by one additional leg in the center or every 60 centimeters. For this last step, we are to use a diamond drill bit to drill hole for the PVC bulkheads. And for this step, it's important to know where you have the bottom frame, because we are to drill in the bottom glass, and the frame covers the bottom, so we need to have the bulkhead stay clear of that. We will use a diamond drill bit to drill hole according to what the bulkheads require, and then for the sake of demonstration, we'll add 3 pipes preliminary up with the bulkhead. 3 pipes, that's one for having the pump return, and 2 for having the downflow. You need 1 for the downflow and 1 for the safety. After that, we need to add an overflow compartment or box in the return and the downflow, and this is for a peninsula style tank, quite commonly done by 3 pieces of glass, silicone to the side. Keep fish and snail and big debris in the tank, it's quite common to add an overflow comb or a surface skimmer. And then for step squeezing, it is quite common to use black glass for the overflow compartment. And to have the return, in this it makes sense to have the midsection and a T-shape on the PVC for the return flow into the aquarium from the bottom, so I'll add that by the sketch as well. Okay, we're getting there. Let's focus on the filtration area. It's not necessary, but it makes a lot of sense to add a floorboard to have an even surface. So let's let's cut that out and let's do that for the complete cabinet. Then we need to add our second tank, and this we typically refer to as the sump, and it has to fit between the 2x4s obviously. And having this tank added, I would recommend 2 pieces of glass to separate 2 compartments. This construction of 2 sheet metal glass at the side of each other is known as a bubble trap typically, but we will not use it for that purpose. You don't need that anymore, but we will use it to improve the performance of the surface skimmer and contain the surface film in the filtration area of the skimmer. Let's continue with the PVC piping. First, the pipe for the return pump, and I like to keep it just below the overflow compartment, as if you do it correctly, if you do it smart, you will be able to disassemble the return line without having to cut the PVC pipe. Okay, pump added. Let's continue. Then the flow for the 2 downflows we will introduce with more advanced piping in the second section of the sump. We will get to this later, but by mistake here I added 2 valves, and it's only one that is required. You shouldn't have one on the safety valve. Now we need some power, so we need sockets in the cabinet. Let's add sockets, and then these sockets are connected to the socket in the wall, and we connect the pump to the socket in it. Make sure it all is leveled, and is it leveled, we're ready to start filling up with water. And we'll start with the main tank, and doing this we will have eventually flow going over to the overflow compartment. Having flow in the overflow compartment, we will fill it up, and eventually it'll drain down in the overflow pipes. This will start filling up the sump and the first compartment, where we later will put the protein skimmer. And when that is full, it'll flow over into the return section of the sump, and here we have the pump to pump it back up in the main display, and the loop is closed. So we're approaching the final step of this episode, and that is to add some trim, panels and splines to the stand. And this is, to finish off the carpentry, this is something that requires a lot of practice, so don't expect to do it perfectly the first time. Just be satisfied with what you make. But using some pre-made splines and pre-made cover boards will improve drastically according to my experience. And also for the doors, it makes sense, for instance, to use kitchen doors from, for instance, IKEA with the matching hinge system for the doors. I think that can improve your overall results quite a lot. For me, the end result looks like this, and for a DIY piece, I'm quite satisfied with the end result, and adding the movement of the fish and the looks of the coral, it turns out to be a quite nice piece of furniture for me to enjoy. Now, have you reached the end of this video? I thank you for your attention, and I would very much be curious to know if you have any questions, comments, and if you like me to continue this build like this, then I put the effort in and do this, make this a series. With that said, I wish you a pleasant evening. Thank you for your attention. Bye bye.